Hi, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, it anesthetized a few and excited others. The Pennsylvania primary is now over. Pennsylvania politics, in depth and in detail. And guess what? It all starts right now.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, the host sort of stumbled over whatever that word was. I got through anesthetized. That is not an easy word to say. Well, as always, welcome to the show. Well, the Pennsylvania primary is, as they say now, history. A final wrap-up on Pennsylvania Newsmakers starts now. Joining me is one of the Capitol insiders that we get on the program from time to time, Fred Anton. He's the chairman of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association of Pennsylvania. All right, Fred, as I said, it anesthetized some and excited others. Not a huge turnout. Did that shock you? 27% Republicans, 24% of Democrats. All this excitement, this big Senate race. What was that about?
No, it did not surprise me in the least. Many people I talked with did not know the names of the four contestants in the Democratic gubernatorial primary. For such an important race, it did not get much focus. They knew about Honorado because he ran television commercials.
We better say who he is, the county executive who won the nomination.
Of Allegheny County. But they really didn't know the background of the other three candidates. And the other three candidates didn't have a very high profile in the race.
Tony Williams a bit because of that commercial, you know, I'm thinking out of the box.
But Tony Williams had a lot of money at the end, and he got a lot of votes in Philadelphia. But, of course, the big race was Arlen Specter against Joe Sestak.
You think that sucked the oxygen out of the entire gubernatorial race because everybody in the world was in this state covering it? I mean,
they were, and there was a lot of money spent on television, and there was a lot of national interest. And really, I think many of the issues in that race could be a primer for political science course. You could have a political science course on the various issues that are raised by that election.
Now let's talk a little bit about, let's just sort of go around the horn here. This was supposed to be the, anti-incumbent year, right?
Yes.
Only one state house member lost renomination, no member of Congress.
Karen Bayer lost.
That's right, a Republican. No member of Congress lost renomination in our state. Do you think that those of us who talked a lot about anti-incumbency, do you think we exaggerated? I mean, where was the proof, other than Arlen Specter, and there's other wrinkles in that election, as you know, do you think we just exaggerated this anti-incumbent feeling?
Well, first of all, I think next to the Arlen Specter race, a race that's getting national attention is the Mark Kritz Burns race for the Murtha seat. And, of course, the Democratic candidate won that, the Murtha's chief of staff. And the Democrats are taking a lot of consolation from that nationally and trying to spin that there's not going to be a backlash against Obama and against incumbents. And
but I'm still sort of surprised, I mean, that we had all this furor in our state over the pay hike. We've had this horrendous budget situation that I know you know a lot about. Yet the anger of the people wasn't taken out on sitting...
Well, we really didn't have a lot of high-profile challenges to these people.
Well, that's a good point.
There really were not any
Only
major...
26 House members were challenged.
Well, they were challenged, but they weren't challenged in a way where a lot of resources were brought to the table.
That's an excellent point. And then we had two members of the House, former speakers of the House, running while being charged for public corruption, felony charges, both of them reelected. Bill DeWeese from the western part of the state, of course, and John Purcell from the eastern part of the state. Purcell looks like he didn't even have a contest down there. He walked over his opponent.
Well, he didn't have a high-profile candidate, but Bill DeWeese did.
Yes,
he had
did.
a very well-known and respected Democratic county commissioner, and he still managed to win. And so really the anti-incumbency backlash was not really played out here.
Well, that could well, you know, the press corps of the country sort of focused on anti-establishment. You know, we had some races in other parts of the country where an establishment candidate or two, you know, got like the proverbial finger in the eye, didn't win. But I agree with you. I was really somewhat surprised that the Tea Party movement and the anger on the left, and it exists on both sides of the aisle, didn't generate more upsets.
No, it did not.
But as you point out, maybe it was just a question of the money and the... Go ahead.
One thing I noticed here in my analysis of the Republican lieutenant governor races and also in the Democratic gubernatorial race was the regionalism that was reflected in the votes. These candidates, of course, the endorsed candidate, James Cawley, only got 26% of the vote, and the regional candidates did quite well in their region. Craig Pepper did well, and others did well in their region.
That was a 9-person race, and with very little money spent on only one, I think, candidate televised. All right, we're going to break. When we come back, I want to let Fred Anton weigh in on the important U.S. Senate race. We'll be back with Pennsylvania Newsmakers following these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, bringing educational innovation and freedom to the children of Pennsylvania. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by PAConstructionJobs.com. For more information about rewarding careers in the highway construction industry, visit PAConstructionJobs.com. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, as I said, it anesthetized some and excited others. The Pennsylvania primary is now history. We're assessing it with Fred Anton coming up, 2 of the state's leading reporters. We'll get into some other details about that. All right, Fred. I'll tell you what, everybody thought that it would be close. It ended up not being close. The celebrated Pennsylvania primary watched all over the country. Arlen Specter's long history. You know Senator Specter as well as anybody, the history. What legacy do you think this guy brings to this?
Well, I'm sorry to see it end this way. If Arlen Specter had retired, because he will be 81 at the end of his 5th term, with 5 terms under his belt, a far different tone would be put on his service than will now likely be on it. I think it will be interesting in the 7 months that Arlen is serving in the United States Senate, and I can assure you that he will continue to serve with enthusiasm. He will not be retired. No, he will not be a lame duck.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think he will try to reinforce his role as an independent. Now,
that's a good point.
He's portrayed himself in this switch to Democrat as an independent, that he has always been an independent, and he even said that he would not vote lockstep with the Democrats even after he changed parties.
But he did for the most part, 95% voting record. With the Obama folks, are you telling me that you think he'll kind of go back to being Arlen Specter, the maverick, the independent, that Obama cannot count on
Absolutely, absolutely. With no, I think that is his true identity. That I feel he feels himself most comfortable with that.
Oh, I think you're right there. You're absolutely right.
So I would expect him to, after he recovers from the shock of this defeat, to serve out his term with a lot of vigor. I would say
you raised a good question that a lot of people have sort of been reluctant to talk about, and that is, after 5 terms, 80 years old, health, a titanic and valiant battle with Hodgkin's, as you well know, that he could have just said, I made my contribution, have all the soirees and parties and not have to lose, go out in what turned out to be a fairly bitter campaign towards the end between the two of them.
Yes.
So your point is that there was another way for him.
Yes, there was. And I think it's unfortunate that the television commercials took the tack of defining Senator Specter as either an opportunist or someone who did not belong in the party he was running in. And I must say that I think Neil Oxman's brilliant commercial, the campaign group, and not only that,
by the way, was the commercial where Arlen Specter, at the conclusion of it, said, I'd switch parties to get re-elected. Go ahead.
And
As if I'd have to tell the viewers of the show.
I think the campaign groups desirability as consultants will go up.
And don't tell me that Neil Oxman, who was responsible for the Sustack commercials, is also a caddy. We got to point that out for Tom Watson on the tour. But he doesn't need the money. Go ahead.
Also, I think the timing and the positioning of those commercials and the artfulness, which
brilliant campaign.
And there were 9 of those commercials. I watched them on the internet. I don't know how frequently they ran.
Frequently, trust me, frequently.
And in what media markets, but they had a tremendous impact. I think Arlen went negative on Sustack too early, and that negativism was lost at the end.
Okay. Fred, I want to, very astute observations, as always. Thanks for coming on. All right, we have 2 of the state's leading journalists we're going to get into. Actually, we'll talk a little bit more about the governor's race. We didn't get into Tom Corbett, against Dan Honorata. We'll play that out for you after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the State System of Higher Education. 14 state-owned universities. The state system is the largest provider of higher education in Pennsylvania. And by the Hospital and Health System Association of Pennsylvania, working towards a healthy Pennsylvania.
Hi, welcome back to the program. Well, Scott Detrow from Pennsylvania Public Radio and John Micek from the Allentown Call, 2 of the state's leading journalists, are here to help. They're weighing in on this election. I'm sorry, anesthetize some. I have trouble getting that out, and excited others. Boy, the turnout wasn't anything shocking. Did that shock you, Scott? I mean, 24%.
I mean, considering up until weeks before the election, nobody knew who was running. Well, I think we expected low turnout. Then the weather was bad. Yeah. And apparently a lot of people, Governor Rendell included, are saying that low turnout, especially in Philadelphia, had a lot to do with Arlen Specter losing.
Now, hold on a minute. Let's talk about this. I do not believe that in the least. Do you believe that when you lose by that percentage point, he would have had a win? What happened to the other counties then?
Let's look at this. I mean, Senator Specter only carried 3 of 67 counties.
You got it.
The turnout in Philadelphia, to further your medical metaphor, was anemic among registered Democrats. It was 24% statewide. It was less than that in Philadelphia. But I mean, really, the factors that did in Senator Specter were preordained.
You got it. I mean,
coming into this race, the incumbency, the party switch.
Yeah.
you know, which was encapsulated in the ad, you know, as we all refer to. But I mean, coming into it, a lot of it was predetermined.
Okay. The thing is, with the ad, we all knew exactly what was coming for months. We all talked about at some point Sestak's going to run an ad. He's going to show George W. Bush with Arlen Specter. That was out there. There was nothing the Specter campaign could do to erase the fact that he was a Republican for years and that he was very blunt, perhaps a bit too blunt, in the weeks after he switched parties, saying he was doing it because he wanted to get reelected.
Yeah, I mean, it is surprising that he didn't just talk more about the party and what had happened to the Republican Party, John Micek, and how, you know, he was the he didn't stress the independent voice.
Yeah, I mean,
that honestly he had
been. That he was for a lot of years,
and
he was a bane to the Bush White House, and you know, in the Clinton in a lot of ways by the independent nature. But he didn't. And you know, when you were out in the field talking to voters, a lot of them, the one thing that kept coming back to me again and again was the opportunism of the switch. A lot of them, I mean, and these were Democrats who simply just couldn't get past that.
Right, and I think all the Sestak campaign had to do, and we saw that they ended up doing it pretty well, was point out Arlen Specter's reasons for switching parties and present, you know, a viable alternative. And I think the bar is a bit lower for the challenger. You know, hi, I'm in Congress, I'm an admiral, I had a good military record, I could be a senator too.
Great, I mean, look. Going after his naval background, going after his naval service without a lot of specifics. You know, it's not like there was a smoking gun other than that Navy Times story was John, I think, cut both ways. I don't think. Go ahead.
It was dynamite. I mean, you really don't want to go there unless you have a, you know. Now it looks like we're unfolding in Connecticut against Attorney General Richard Blumenthal, where there is a paper trail, where there are specifics about his record of military service. We didn't have that in this race,
or lack thereof.
We
know Joe Sestak was in the Navy.
We didn't have that in this race,
and we know he was in Afghanistan and Iraq, right?
But I mean, and it got sketchy fast, and voters get turned off by that.
All right, then the next segment, I'm going to get to the governor's race, which maybe did anesthetize a lot of us. That's another issue. But, Scott, moving forward here, I think this is going to be one whale of a U.S. Senate race between, who's that? Oh, Pat Toomey. We all know who he is. Pat Toomey and Joe Sestak. Could there be two more different?
No.
Go ahead.
I think we're looking at a very long wonk fest, is the way I described it. Saw Pat Toomey yesterday in the Pittsburgh area, and he said, I like Joe Sestak, we get along, we couldn't be any more different. Sestak the whole time, every time you interview him, he'd say, I want to talk about the issues, I want to talk about the issues. He's going to get a chance to talk about the issues.
Ad nauseum.
Because whether it's cap and trade, whether it's health care, any of the leading issues, these guys are on polar opposites.
Yeah, we're going to go to break. It's not going to get personal? Do you really believe that?
I don't think so. I mean, there's not the history of bad blood between these two guys. There was between Specter and Toomey. But you can never tell. I mean, you know, who knows what sort of ad the Sestak campaign, is going to pull out of its hat later on down the line.
Oh yeah, we know they're going to blame
him for the collapse of Western capitalism. That ad is coming.
He's going to run against George Bush, and Pat Toomey is going to run against Nancy Pelosi
and Barack Obama.
Yes,
who's not. All right, when we come back, the red hot, can I say, we got to get a red hot governor's race going here, guys.
At some point.
As soon as that starts.
All right, we won't go to a convention of anesthesiologists before. They got to wake us up. All right, we'll be back. Governor's preview coming up after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by Highmark Blue Shield, changing the way health plans work for business with a variety of plan options for employers and more choices for employees. Information is available at highmark.com. Have a greater hand in your company's health. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
Hey, welcome back. Well, let's do the governor's race. John Micek, that went according to Hoyle. Is that the way that should go? Dan Honorato swept the state. What, 45% of the vote?
Yep.
Take it. Give us a quick overview.
I mean, it was essentially the Ed Rendell playbook coming from the West. Look at me. I'm the successful county executive guy, the state's second largest county. I brought jobs back. I can do for Allegheny County what I did, or rather for Pennsylvania, what I did for Allegheny County. You got on the air early, spent a shed load on commercials that really weren't really that nasty, except when they had to be. And
basic introductory commercials,
stuff,
not some glitzy thing,
and responded to the attacks when he had to, and blammo, you know, that was it.
Yep. All right, you get to do Tom Corbett now. Like anyone, you know what I said?
I thought it would be a bit closer.
So did I, and that was the key. Not who would win, but go ahead.
Right. Early in the day on Tuesday, the Roar campaign was very excited about low turnout because they were sure that if it was a real low sample size, their base would turn out. Their base would be fired up. They were going to the polls knowing it was a long shot. That didn't end up happening. It ended up being that widespread. I think what's going to be interesting is whether Corbett can get the Tea Party voters who backed Sam Roar. He says it'll be no concern, but if you talk to the Roar camp, they say, look, we don't know whether we're going to endorse Corbett, and he really alienated a lot of the Tea Party type people in the state.
The Tea Party people want to see Dan Honorado, if he's right, the second coming of Ed Rendell. That's what the Tea Party people want?
A slightly more conservative
okay,
Ed Rendell,
all right. In all fairness, good point.
But I want to say, though, I mean, I talked with one Republican consultant on Tuesday who said anything above 30% would trigger the embarrassment factor for Corbett. And the fact that Roar did get to 30%, I think is an achievement in itself. I wasn't sure that he was going to get that far. So I mean, I will tip my hat there. But this, I mean, we can talk about this a bit. I mean, about whether or not the results here are what they say about the strength of the Tea Party movement in the state. You know, we had one House incumbent, one state House incumbent.
That's it.
Defeated by a Tea Party candidate, a guy named Justin Simmons beat Karen Beyer up in the Lehigh Valley, where my paper is from. Apart from that, all the congressional incumbents, you know, it's
including two incumbents who are facing corruption charges. Both Bill DeWeese and John Purcell wone their nominations.
Surprising Pennsylvania culture that would happen. Does that shock you?
Well, it's interesting that if you read every paper in the country, if you turn on cable news, there's an anti-incumbent fever sweeping the nation. Apparently, that does not trickle down to local races where people like to have the money brought back for them. They like that pork spending.
All right, you look at John Purcell, Mayfair in Philadelphia, still well loved up there. Forget the charges.
All right, we got about a minute or so left. Moving forward, do you think, I'm going to ask both of you the same question, competitive election here? You know, normally you would think, well, Corbett's probably better situated. He leads the polls. Honorado's not a bad candidate.
Not by much, though.
And Honorado's not a bad candidate. Go ahead.
No. First all-Western gubernatorial race, all Pittsburgh race since 1978. Dick Thornburg and former Pittsburgh Mayor Tom Flaherty. It's going to be a heck of a race. Head-to-head, Corbett comes in nominally the favorite, but it's only about 6 or 7 points. No money spent yet on TV. Going to be very competitive.
And the Honorado camp was very aggressive right off the bat Wednesday, going after Tom Corbett. And Corbett, you know, looking at one day, Corbett was not as sharp with the elbows as Honorado was coming off the bat. Honorado apparently talking about Corbett has no executive experience, he's never created a job, and he's using, he got into the whole bonus gate, he's using that for a political gain. And Corbett was kind of staying away from getting into it with Honorado right away. We'll see how that goes.
But now hold on, Corbett is going to say, I'm running against Ed Rendell. The governor's job performance is down, budget. I mean, could this budget situation, now I know what you two guys are going to do. You're going to turn immediately to the coverage of the budget. We have 45 seconds left. Is Tom Corbett going to run against Ed Rendell as well as Dan Honorado?
Tom Corbett's running against Harrisburg. He's running against the broader culture. He says, okay, elect me. I can turn budgets in on time, but we'll see.
Is he going to run against?
He is. He says Honorado is more Rendell, and he said enough with Ed Rendell was part of his stump speech on Tuesday night.
Well, we'll see. All right. Well, look, we'll have you guys back. All in all, we hope that we can get. I think this election is now going to get a lot more excited than we saw during the primary, which I don't know didn't do a lot for a lot of the voters. All right, thanks for watching Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, you stay well.